Albert Whitlock's matte department provided 5 matte shots for the sci-fi feature film Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Created by Universal matte department artist Sid Dutton, the 5 matte paintings seen in the film were also reused in subsequent episodes for television, starring Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray.
For a man whose expertise is allegedly 5 centuries old, you seem quite opinionated.
You're right. It's none of my business how you blow up your world. My generation didn't know what they were doing either.
I'm not sure exactly how I got the job. It must have been okayed by Al. Whatever reason, I had the show. It's going to be 5 shots. It was never supposed to be a movie. It was supposed to be just a pilot episode for the show. Dan Haller was the director. He's a wonderful man. He was a great director to work for. And he certainly understood what it was to be an artist. And he was very encouraging. And he came over at one point when the paintings were getting to the point where they're almost finished. And he was looking through a hand viewer at frames of the film. And he got real excited, said, "Can I borrow this and these pieces of film? I want to take them up to the front office up in the tower." And I said, "Sure." And he came back a little while later, about an hour later or so, and he said, "The studio loves it. They love it so much." He said, "They're going to make this pilot into a feature film. And it's all because of these matte shots." Well, I think he was exaggerating. Apparently, there's nothing like a picture to sell something. And I think the idea that it was the Star Wars days, and this is Universal's bid to sort of catch on to that type of world, Star Wars world. And they saw something they could hang on to and say, okay, we can go forward with this and make it into something a little bit more elaborate. First shots, I remember, I think I scouted down at what was the MGM Culver City backlot, which was being torn down. And those seemed to be the perfect location for the shots where Buck and the little robot guy are walking around a destroyed city. It was sad seeing MGM being torn down. I'd heard so much about it. There were remnants of what used to be castles and all being torn down for real estate.
You didn't have to come with me, Theo.
I wanted to be with you, Buck. I wish you'd listen to reason. This is nothing compared to what lies ahead.
Why don't we stay here for the night?
Oh, I'm afraid we'd freeze to death.
Well, it's straight ahead then, I guess. I'm just sorry I brought you guys into all this.
First shot was just an introduction to some destruction. The only funny bit about getting ready for the first shot was I was running late, and there was a parking facility at Universal that you had to pay monthly for, and I couldn't afford parking there. I usually parked on the street or took the bus or bicycled to the studio. Since I was running late, I took my old Dodge Dart and tried to maneuver between the exit, and there was teeth to prevent people from driving into the parking lot. And there was 1 or 2 of the teeth from this exit that were broken off and bent. I thought I could maneuver the car between the 2 of them, and I didn't. So I blew 3 tires, but I found a parking spot. So that was my introduction to working on the movie. I worked it out when I got back.
What's he saying now?
You don't want to know.
You guys go back. I can put up with whatever's out there, if it helps me to find what happened to my people.
I'm with you, Buck, but we'd better hurry. It'll be getting dark soon.
And the second shot was looking down a destroyed cityscape. The shot was pretty good. There wasn't anything really to hang on to. The bulldozer had already taken out most of the street. I had practice working with Al, of course, working on destroyed cities and other movies. I think there was a destroyed Japan in MacArthur, but I can't remember if that was before or after Buck Rogers. And I also, in my own studio, I had painted destroyed cities. Don't ask me why. So those are the first 2 shots, I think, that we shot.
This part seems more of a dream than a nightmare. Look, I was a little out of it yesterday. I'd like to apologize.
I accept your apology, Captain.
Tell me about the Holocaust.
I can't.
The The next shot that I recall is the Bonaventure shot. It was a straight shot looking at the Bonaventure. I repainted most of it so I could have my gag, which was this sort of transporter at the very top of the frame.
The camera had to be somewhere around 8, maybe 10 feet off the surface of the cement walkway leading to the Bonaventure. One of the things we had that I think was Al's idea was these pods. They were, of course, square, and the bottom pod was somewhere around 5 feet high. And then inside of that was another box that fits snugly inside, and that would give you another 3 feet or so. Entirely different than parallels. They were a convenient way to get up reasonably high quickly without building a parallel and bracing it off and making sure it was rock steady. If you had to go any higher than that, then you needed something else. It looks like this telescoping box was braced against the wall of the Bonaventure walkway. That's how we got up to that height. And then there would have been braces that were called kickers. It would come out and they'd be sandbagged so that camera wouldn't move. That was the biggest thing with the matte shot and why we used old-fashioned cameras. The shot had to be rock steady. And if it wasn't rock steady, then the matte would be moving against the painting. So we had these old Mitchell rackovers. You couldn't actually see what you were filming when you were filming. You just could line it up.
The camera is a rackover camera, and I'll explain what that is. Reflex viewing hadn't been invented yet, so an operator couldn't look through the camera while it was running. So in order to set up his scene, what he would do is he would rack the camera over, push a button on the T-handle, and what that does is rack the camera and the magazine, the film, away from the back of the lens and line up the operator's eyepiece with the lens so the operator could look on a ground glass and set critical focus and set his framing. And when he was ready to shoot, then he would rack the camera back over and put the film behind the lens, and he would operate by using the side finder with just a little parallax.
If you look carefully at the painting, there seems to be something that resembles activity, cars moving or something. And those are scratch-out gags. And you would scratch the painting, revealing the glass behind it. And then you would, on a second pass, with the painting in darkness, you would backlight the painting and have what's called an interference gag. This is something you'd paint on another piece of glass that would interrupt and create little dots of light moving across.
On the left-hand side, I decided to have somebody standing, and I was going to cut off his body so it wasn't the obvious matte line. So I thought if I had somebody standing there rigidly, that I could replace the top part of the body, and the painting would integrate more into the live action. The extra, it was his big day, and he just couldn't stop moving. He wanted to walk around and shake hands with people and wave. So I had to tell him that he was a guard, and that if he had to stand at attention. He understood that, so he acted that part. And I was able to replace the top part of his body that way. The city itself was based on a whole bunch of things. I'd seen a lot of science fiction movies, Metropolis being one of them. I had studied architecture at Berkeley for a while, so I thought of people like Hugh Ferris, who was an architectural visionary back in New York during the 30s, and also did work on commission for architects. And Corbusier was kind of the father of brutalism. Some of his buildings were quite beautiful. So all these things were going through my mind. Also, World's Fairs. Some of the World's Fairs, especially from the turn of the 19th century and the 20th century, they were pretty extraordinary World Fairs. I really wasn't sure what I was going to paint. And I was using Al's system of just blocking in shapes. And then when the paint dried, you sort of made sense of it all. And it started coming together. And after I knew kind of what the city was like, painting the other lower angle matte shots, the one lower angle matte shot where a shuttle comes towards exit, I think, to another shot, that was all based on that first painting. And then the city started coming together in my mind. Those are all full paintings. There was nothing involved in those using live action. Luckily, Lynn Ledgerwood had just joined us, and Lynn was one of these guys who was an artist in his own right. He'd gone to an art institute called Chenard, so he could paint. He had great artistic sense. He made a little miniature of a shuttle, and I think it was mainly kit bashing, where you take bits and pieces of old plastic models from a hobby shop and you make something out of it. And that was successful.
Get me intercept.
There was a little insert stage that Al would use for lots of things. It was also a place where Lynn would make things. It wasn't officially part of the Matt departments, but we had access to it. I can't remember the politics involved. When I first went to work for Al, that's where I came up with the idea of making a cityscape with little BB-size decoration beads. And I used a ruler to take these little beads and make them into what appeared to be a cityscape. And that was what you saw outside of one of the windows in the Hindenburg. That was where the insert stage was. And it wasn't too far away from the Jack Webb building that was renamed, after everybody forgot about Jack Webb.
I mean, you're in charge of all this?
That's right. Now, if there are no more questions...
Oh, hey, Colonel, take it easy. I'd fly with you anytime.
Take this barbarian in for interrogation.
What? Hey, wait a minute. Wait. What are you doing? Hey, wait.
Dr. Hewer.
Yes?
Would you like to go someplace?
I'm not up to that yet. I've been out of it for quite a while. 500 years.
You mean you're just leaving, just like that?
We'll get back into this later, Colonel. I promise. You ready?
One of the things that is important to me when I'm painting architecture, especially futuristic architecture, is that I wanted to follow the rules that I know about gravity and foundations. And I want the buildings to be able to stand. And I want to know what type of material it is. And it could be a futuristic cement, but it's still a material like cement. And I wanted them to have a foundation that would look like they were being supported. And I like to think of a city as having, like any city, is not built just by one person, but a whole bunch of people. In my cityscapes in Buck Rogers, I wanted it to look like there were different architects involved, different people, different times over the 500 years, like there would be in any city, even New Chicago. Painting something that looked like the Bonaventure into a big wide shot was one of the ways of doing it. Buck Rogers was definitely an important show for me. It introduced me to a lot of people like Dan Curry, for example, who became one of the supervisors on Star Trek. Working on Star Trek was really fun, and then it was one imaginary city after another, probably the most important show I ever worked on.